New head coach. And also, let's talk about assistant coach Fraser heading off to TFC, if I'm not mistaken. You broke that story. I think your site did so, and great on you for doing so. Let's talk about what now Marsh is looking to add on his staff. What type of assistance and what type of play, and then talk about Fraser heading off to TFC.
Well, first of all, Jesse hasn't said exactly who he's going to bring in, but if it's anything like himself, I think it's going to be a high-energy assistant coach. Hopefully he'll bring in someone like a Robin Fraser, who I considered like a Don Zimmer. You really need a really good bench coach, and I thought, he did well for Mike Pecky. Hopefully he'll, Jesse Marsh will find someone in that same orbit. Robin Fraser, well, the reason why he went off to Toronto, according to Christian Dyer of BigAppleSoccer.com, he was offered a one-year contract from the Red Bulls. He got a 3-year deal with Toronto, and in this day and age, the way there's so much coaching insecurity, I can't blame anyone for going for the 3 years over the 1-year deal. And I think that explains where New York is right now, quite frankly. Ali Curtis he's the sporting director who did the firing of Mike Pecky. He got a 1-year deal as well, too. So things are on very shaky ground with the Red Bulls right now.
Michael, let's go back to Fraser. What are TFC fans expecting from him to bring to the table here? You mentioned Don Zimmer, God rest his soul. He was a genius. He was a guy that put a lot of things into play for the head man of whatever team he was with. What is Fraser going to bring to Greg Vanney in this staff? Is it almost an insulation? Is almost a feeder of a lot of different ideas that he's going to give to Vanney?
I think you said it perfectly. Someone who will give him a lot of ideas, someone who is calm and collected. Like anyone else will get excited, but someone who will give the coach several options. I think when he was with the Red Bulls, Robin did a very good job of helping Mike with on the tactical end. I think everyone will admit that Michael wasn't the last word on tactics. He was learning considerably, but I really think Robin helped him tremendously, and I'm not going to put him in the same orbit as Don Zimmer, but definitely a capable assistant coach who I think will eventually wind up running the show somewhere in MLS someday.
Let's go back to Ali Curtis. He is the new club sporting director, and to me, he comes in right away, makes a statement to the Red Bulls fans and says, I'm calling the shots here, whether you like it or not. Petke, a fan favorite with the supporters there, a guy that really enjoyed the supporters and had an open relationship with them. And here comes Ali Curtis saying, it's my decision, the decision that I will live and die with. I mean, that says a lot about a guy coming in and saying, I'm going to start stirring the pot here.
Yes, definitely. When you're getting rid of a coach, a popular coach, who in his first year ever as a head coach leads the team to the Supporters' Shield, the first trophy in team history. The second year, the Red Bulls were not as successful, but they got into the playoffs as that fourth-place team. They managed to move on and got within a goal of reaching MLS Cup. It would have been interesting to see if they would have gotten rid of Mike Pecky if the Red Bulls did reach MLS Cup, or heaven forbid win it, because that would have been even take a lot more chutzpah to get rid of a coach like that. The fans are in an uproar. I've spoken and been in contact with a number of fans who want their season ticket deposits back. They do not want to spend money on this team. Maybe, who knows, maybe they'll go to a couple of games, but they're incensed. When you get rid of a popular coach like Mike Pecky, this is what's going to happen.
And I don't blame them, Michael, to be quite honest and blunt about it. That's why I love New York fans. They really are people that stand by someone who they believe in, and then when they get slapped around like they just did, they're going to backtrack, and they're going to, like you said, not renew their season tickets. And another guy who I've been thinking about all off season, a fan favorite if I'm not mistaken as well, Dax McCarty. I would not be surprised if his days are numbered and he asks to depart as well. Your thoughts?
It would be a blow for the team because I thought he and Eric Alexander formed a formidable pair over the final 10 to 12 games of the regular season and playoffs at the center mid spot. That's when the team really started to thrive. They got to know their roles very well, and you might not get as much of the spotlight when you're playing in that role because you're talking about a pair of holding midfielders, but that's where the Red Bulls excelled the most during the season. Yes, Orlando is where Dax McCarty is from, and I know the Orlando City FC would love to have him on the team. The last I heard is that Dax would like to remain with the Red Bulls, but it's pretty. It would be a tough situation if the Red Bulls did get rid of him and they don't get the proper compensation in return, if that did happen. But I hope he stays, quite frankly.
Let's talk about this squad heading into 2015 now, Michael. There's a lot of holes there, a lot of key pieces that are gone now, and this has to be really a challenge for head coach Jesse Marsch and his staff to really insert some young, fresh blood, and possibly a guy who we now hear out there today, a former New York player, Josie Altidore, Sasha Kieselstein as well, having interest from the Red Bulls. I think that's going to be a waste of money in trying to attract these two guys because you don't have enough, in my opinion, support behind them to really make a strong push to win a division title, to go to the playoffs and make some noise. Your thoughts?
Well, I think Altidore would fit in well in MLS. I'd like to see a different Josie Altidore 6 years later, a much more mature player. At the time, we really never got a chance to see Altidore playing on a consistent basis, whether it was injuries, national team call-ups, or sometimes not playing at striker. They used him at outside mid once in a while. With 6 years of national team duty and European club responsibilities under his belt, you're going to see a different player here. And even though he has struggled with Sunderland finding time to play, I think he would do well in MLS. I'm not going to say thrive, but I think he'll at least do well. Sasha Kalestin, a mercurial midfielder. You don't know sometimes what you're going to get from him, particularly at the international level, and I think that also comes down to the club level. I'm not as, let's say, excited about him returning to the United States as I am Altidore, but I think Altidore would fit in well in MLS. Kalestin, I'm not certain if he would be as consistent as you want as for a midfielder.
So right now, Michael, just before we turn to New York City FC and talk about their theatrics and their slap in the face to their fans and Lampard, let's finish off with the Red Bulls and talk about right now what they need to do to re-energize and get a little bit more excitement into their fan base. Is it to sign a Josie Altidore? Is it to make a splash, an even bigger a player to bring over here? Or are they just going to have to look and wait and go through a youth, type of a rejuvenation with this franchise to get people back in their seats?
Boy, if they do it that way, it might take years. When I say years, 2 or 3 years, and I don't think any team can afford to go that way these days, particularly in New York, particularly with a new team coming to town, even with all the pockmarks and problems that they've put upon themselves in recent times. I think if I was running the show, although it's not my money, I would like to bring in another well-known player. I'm not going to say someone as well-known as Henry because he's very difficult to find. And I wouldn't say spend $4 to $6 million on a player, but there are enough high-profile players out there, forwards I think they're going to need. Or shall I say it, attacking midfielder. That would be nice too. That would really solidify things for this team. Because I'm not convinced Bradley Wright Phillips will thrive without Thierry Henry on the team, because Henry set him up for many of the goals, and the fact that Henry was on the field took some of the coverage away from Wright Phillips as well too. So I would like to see, a big name player. I fear that's not going to happen though.
Do you feel, Michael, in the next 2 to 3 years, if the Red Bulls don't make a real push to win an MLS championship or bring a few players of name recognition, that this franchise could be on its way out, maybe relocating or just falling off the face of the earth?
I don't see that happening, but of course we have been surprised, i.e. today's events. I had written earlier today on my second column of the day. Usually I don't write two columns on the same day. This day was unique. I wrote about the Red Bull. Their owners have given up on the team, essentially, because they're giving out one-year contracts. And basically, I've spoken to sources in and around the league that have said that Red Bulls are looking to sell, and they're just trying to lose as little money as possible. So I think they're trying to get out as quickly as they can. Whether or not they could find a buyer is something else. It would be a shame if this team folded up, because if there's any legacy from Red Bull, it's that wonderful stadium, Red Bull Arena. And there should be more than just a wonderful stadium that we're talking about as a legacy. But they really, they did put their money where their mouth is when it came to that stadium, but there's got to be more than that.
Something that just hit me while listening to you, Michael, you wonder if ever Henry would ever come back with some big-time investors and say, hey, I want to get this franchise back where it needs to be. I want to win a championship with them. I want to attract big-name players here. I want to be like a Beckham, like a Keane, this type of person in this franchise to resurrect it. You ever think that could go down, maybe?
Boy, interesting thought. I wish I thought of that. That's an interesting situation. I don't know. Right now, I think Henry will be more than happy just being a pundit, a TV pundit in England. But I just think his heart is with Arsenal more than any other team. And I'm not saying he's going to try and buy Arsenal, but I guess at this juncture, I would say I'd be surprised if he did it. I would love to see him try to do it, but I'd be surprised if he did, though.
Let's turn our attention, before we let you go, Michael, to New York City FC, getting ready for the draft, getting ready for their first season. And all of a sudden, we find out that the charades of Lampard, and it's just an unbelievable story, a kick in the gut to these supporters, to these fans, to MLS. I think it's a joke. I think it's a disgrace. And to me, I could care less if I was a New York FC supporter. If he comes in July and August, I would say, don't bother coming anymore. We don't need you. Tell us on your end what you've been hearing out there in the streets from those supporters and what you think should take place now.
There are a number of supporters who are incensed about this as well. Maybe not as incensed about Pecky, because we're talking Red Bulls have been around for 2 decades. This team hasn't played a game yet. It hasn't had a training camp yet. But for me, what I'm concerned about with this team is the credibility. And, we were all led to believe he was a designated player signed by Major League Soccer and, of course, NYCFC, and now we find out it was the other way around. And right now, except for some comments by the commissioner to Sports Illustrated's Grant Wall, and I know Grant did his best to try to pry words out of the commissioner's mouth, no one from the team has said anything about it. And every day I think it gets worse. Just because the Pecky thing has grabbed the headlines in the New York, New Jersey area doesn't mean we've forgotten about it. And quite frankly, for me, and I think a lot of fans in this city or this area, I think their credibility has to be questioned. And they've had enough